This is our second Watershed event of the year, and we are thrilled to be hosting Peter Murphy, along with friends and fellow writers Moneeba, Joel Diaz-Porter, and Karen Z. Duffy. I'm Teresa Burns, the founder of Watershed Literary Events, and I want to shout out just a few people before we get started in earnest. First and foremost, of course, is our program manager, Ann Wessel. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Or should be a little louder? Ann Wessel. Of course, Blake Smith, who's the Cultural Affairs Manager for South Orange, which sponsors us. Linda Beck and Matt Glass at the Meadowland Park Conservancy, which is another one of our sponsors. And the South Orange Town Council and Mayor Sheena Collum, possibly the future Lieutenant Governor Collum, we'll see. So we thank them. Greg Fagan, who's up in the front here with the camera. And thanks especially for everyone who came out today. We always say that's the best way to support arts programming in towns like South Orange, for programs like Watershed, just showing up and supporting the poets and writers who we bring to you. They have books you can buy and get signed afterwards. So we hope you will support them that way so our program can keep growing and thriving. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce Peter Murphy first, and then he's going to individually introduce each of our other writers for this afternoon. All right? So I first heard of Murphy writing at the South Orange Community Pool, believe it or not. Some of the other swim moms who had kids on the swim team, and I think, Ann, you were one of them, who also happened to be writers, were talking about going to The Getaway in January. I had just two questions. Number one, what the heck was The Getaway? And number two, how can I join? So it turns out The Getaway is something Peter Murphy founded in 1994, is that correct? When he was a harried college professor at Stockton University, just trying to get some writing done. With a handful of his friends, he booked a bunch of hotel rooms near Atlantic City so they could get away and write for a long weekend free from distraction. So fast forward about 30 years, Peter Murphy Writing has hosted thousands of writers of both poetry and prose, not just at the annual Getaway in January, but in workshops and retreats, online classes. I've taken a bunch of those all over the Northeast and Europe. I've now been to 4 Getaways myself, and each time I do, some of my very best writing gets done there. Plus the food is even good. One thing I'm especially grateful to Peter and his team for in recent years is starting free online writing sessions on Zoom during COVID. People would enter the Zoom room, be given a prompt, and just write for an hour together in silence. It's a very simple concept. Not only did it save me mentally during those awful, isolating months, it allowed me to finally finish a book of poems I'd been working on for about 20 years. Peter Murphy still runs those online sessions on Wednesday nights, right? What are they called? Murphy Writings.
Murphy Writings.
Murphy Writings.
Yeah.
And anyone can join it. You don't have to be a member of anything. Right? You can just come into the Zoom room and write. He still runs them on Wednesday nights to this day, and they're completely free. Peter was born in Wales and grew up in New York City, where he operated heavy equipment, managed a nightclub, and drove a taxi. He has authored more than 20 books and chapbooks, but 2025 is a particularly big year for him. He's published his first book-length memoir called A Tipsy Fairy Tale, which tells about his colorful upbringing and recovery from drug and alcohol abuse. And he also has a new collection of poems, You Too Were Once on Fire, which I think is one of the all-time best titles for a book, coming out this fall with Terrapin Books. Peter has been awarded 6 creative writing fellowships from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, as well as fellowships and residencies at Yaddo, the Atlantic Center for the Arts, the Millet Colony, the Folger Shakespeare Library, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and any number of other arts agencies we've come to take for granted, but probably shouldn't. After hearing all that, after hearing all that about Peter, it's probably clear that he knows a lot of other writers, many of whom are New Jersey-based. But Anne and I asked him to choose just 3 that he wanted to share the stage with today. He's chosen Moneeba Khan, Joel Diaz-Porter, and Karen Z. Duffy. We consider ourselves incredibly lucky to have all 4 of them with us today to feature at Watershed. Thank you. Here's Peter.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Anne, and everyone else who planned this, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to be reading my work in a few minutes, but I want to introduce our friends. I do have to make one correction, that when I started the Getaway, I was a harried high school teacher and teaching college at night. So I was doing it all, and it was madness. I didn't know what I was doing, and had I known what I was doing, I wouldn't have done it. But I'm glad that I did, these many years later. I'm also glad to introduce my 3 other friends, and particularly we are from Atlantic City. So we've got some attitude going on here. And I hope that you'll hear a bit of that. Our first guest is Moneeba Khan, who was born in Pakistan and immigrated to the United States as a child. She graduated from Atlantic City High School, where Karen and I both taught, though long after she was there, long before she was there, and as well as Stockton University, where she received a Bachelor's of Arts in Biology with a minor in writing. Mo spent her formative years working in her family shop on the Atlantic City Boardwalk, hustling t-shirts and hermit crabs to shooters. That's you people. And like her poems are both honest and kind. Well, let me take that back. Mo is kind, but her poems may not be kind, but they are honest. Mo makes her living working for the Casino Control Commission, making sure that the house doesn't cheat the punters and that the punters don't cheat the house. Please welcome the brilliant and beautiful Moneeba Khan.
Thank you for the introduction, Peter. Hi, everyone. Okay. I'd first like to start with a moment of silence for all the lives that have been lost in Palestine. Thank you. This first poem is titled Calcined. I'm riding the night, car made of tin, headlights a sulphurous glow. I stay on the main road, tonguing the asphalt like a wound. The cowboys sleep in tonight, while their horses dive into the Atlantic. We seek the same salt. Taffy, mouth yawn, ghost car tailgates me. Because no map declares the vein back to you, I follow your phantom scent. Diesel, jasmine, charred fish skin. I dig through the city, hypodermic needle breaks the cement. Annelid mates puncture the air. Because my love is a feral animal, waiting for the feathered dart of time to end its flickering light. This time, I will not let you go. Again. Don't you ever think I went free? Knife fight dance floor at your father's pizza shop. Small blue-handled paring knife growing out of my fingertips. Each sway a declaration, each thrust a celebration. I needed you, pillow-stomached, heart on the wrong side of your chest. We all know there are no winners in this war. Your hair a white flag, whimpers across your face. I throw my helmet across the floor. Dented silver helm rocks on the linoleum. Long slivers of rice fall from the ceiling. You offer me some in your cupped hand. Only when I get close do I see that they're maggots, one slipping off your wedding band. I shake my head, and you splash them onto your face. You're gone. Only an inky cat mushroom at my feet. I am the local who should have moved by now. I am the local who should have moved by now. I step outside onto the grassless plain in the middle of August. My shoes slap against the hardened floor. My hat shades my eyes. Forward I go into Atlantic City. Aquamarine House with a for sale sign has a picture of the realtor that someone vandalized with blacked out eyes and angry V-shaped brows. Greasy paper plate tumbleweed rolls on its edge like a dropped coin. Seagulls circle above. The wind carries their caws that roam and phase into the police sirens. Horsetail reeds tremble in the breeze, their gray tops like cigarette ashes, ready to drop at any second. The thunder of the boards as bicycles run over them woos me from the sidewalk to the beach. 3 foot wide, rusted pike peaks out of the sand like a whale coming up for air. The weathered wooden bench with its black hot chipped enamel arms sears mine. The blades of a biplane whirl as it streaks a blue fabric sign advertisement for injury lawyers. Pine cones erect on the sand, pointy side up, mini Christmas trees. I'm the local who should have moved by now. There's no stone I've left unthrown at a vacant building's window. A penny saved is a penny burned at the slots for the lotus eaters. The jitney's fare, once a nickel, now costs me 15 minutes at work, convincing a shuvie to buy classic novelties they'll forget at the hotel. Here comes the billionaire antichrist. They priced out the locals and now line their pockets with fool's gold. All my miseries are seashells, a conch with the hole punched in its spiral. When lifted to an ear, there's nothing to hear. Sharks are older than trees. I know it's hard to believe that something other than us was here first, that something we take for granted took millions of years to pull itself out of the ocean, survival pulling its roots through the earth. I know it's hard to believe that the 80s blockbuster boogeyman of the sea, predator of the finless week, existed before the branches our primitive forefathers called home. I know I say this in hopes of surprising you, impressing you, trying to make myself believe that my degree might not have landed me a job, but has equipped me with 50 grand worth of Snapple Cat facts that break the ice inoffensively at parties where I want the brightest pair of eyes to look right through me. I know it's hard to believe that aphids are born with their daughters and granddaughters already inside of them, putting your grandma's carpool to school to shame. I know it's hard to believe that birds can sew nests with leaves for fabric, punching through the green veined brocade, more elegant than your high school homecoming queen's dress, before the drunken stumble into the hired stretch limo. Because I know it's hard to believe the mass of all the ants on earth is equal to the mass of all the humans, I can imagine the emptiness after the anteater climate change wipes us out. I'm not right in the head, because now where your red lips were, I see a pair of curved mandibles, the cadence of their snapping, a Morse code about you wanting to quit your job. Now, you're a cardinal, singing your car alarm sound, asking me what I've been up to since you saw me at New Year's. I'm not right in the head, because now the knuckles of your right hand are whirls of wood on a boardwalk without a sandy end. Saw palmetto rises out of the crown of your head. The burnt fronds point with all their alloy nibs at the hollow of my neck. I divinate a hand from the ether, which turns me and I leave. I will not wear a collar tonight. (1980) In the photo, my mother squats on the right side, shotgun rests against her shoulder, Nana in the middle, Aunt Sarah in the forefront with empty arms, Aunt Melissa in the back, shotgun across her chest. Tree sways in the background. I don't remember the pile of dead gray birds on the ground in front of everyone. Sometimes the photo is the bullet. Sometimes you ignore the dead birds just to remember your mother's smile. Lady Liberty. Mother of exiles, once glowed your beacon hand, lighting the way to this golden door promised land. But now your torch houses a phantom flame. Our voices caught on the wind glide past your hollow frame. Your gaze steady, anchored by the spiked crown gripping your head. Tell me, martyr, what lies beneath your copper feet, your tongue dead inside your mouth, turning Salman to Sal, Muhammad to Mo, Mariam to Mary. All the names lost at Ellis Island float like tombstones. Happiness. And this one is after Jean Kenton's poem, Happiness. No, happiness is the first sip of a fountain soda at the movie theater, sitting next to your sisters, dropped popcorn in your lap, sour gummy worms stuck on your wisdom tooth. It comes to the bee sleeping in the tulip. It comes to the baby latching onto mother for milk, and the light that reflects off butterfly wings. It's the aisle seat as you board a flight to see your aunt after 15 years. It comes to the postal worker who falls asleep next to you on the bus. It comes to the white spurs of a dandelion on a windy afternoon. No. Happiness is when you don't have to call the police after you break apart your parents' fight. It's the second your sister comes back alive after she doesn't pick up the phone for 5 hours. The relief in your shoulders after you walk by a group of men who keep the quiet between your footsteps. It's the last lie you tell on the phone to the man who whittled you down from sequoia to toothpick. Happiness is the weight of the portable air conditioner that barricades the door so he can't reach you anymore. When you bleed through your pants at work and cancel your Planned Parenthood appointment. When the bruise is not a broken bone. When the phone cord is too short to go around your neck. This poem is written, it was written in collaboration with the University of Athens in Greece, with a project I did with Stockton University, and we focused on the works of Walt Whitman. Dada Walt. I look for you under my boot soles, as you told me to, lungi tied up as I wade through the marshes of the pine barrens, gamis knotted at my waist, bright green starbus of sphagnum moss trail at the forest edge. Is it here where I should celebrate myself, sing myself to the cedar-scented wind, maybe landing in the Jersey Devil's ear? Dada Walt. I know how you love Peter, your loafing companion, hands intertwined, branches of love. How you loved everyone of every color, creed, and composition, right? I, now 27 years old, Know that I love the same as you. My love sings the body electric. Here now, the rolling tear gas canister on the cracked asphalt. The smoke and girths are black and brown bodies into a wriggling mass, charging forth and forth. A firm hand on a fresh wound, the cool milk rinsing a child's eyes. Sweat and song perfume the air. No justice, no peace. Dada wall. I wait for you, laying on a cot, freshly pressed shalwar gummies in hand, fluttering till it cascades onto your body. Thank you.
Thank you, Mo. Our next reader, Joel Diaz-Porter, is one of the strangest, coolest, and smartest people I know. Born in Pittsburgh, he served in the Air Force, then moved to Washington, D.C., where he became DJ Renegade. He is a five-time individual finalist for the National Poetry Slam and two-time Haiku Slam champion. His poems have been published in Poetry Magazine, Time Magazine, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and many other journals. He's performed on The Today Show, Slam Nation, the Black Entertainment Network, and the film Slam. And in fact, I was just thinking, it was here, New Jersey Network, State of the Arts, did a special on him several years ago. Like Joel himself, his poetry collection, Ideas of Improvisation, will surprise and delight you. Joel lives in the casinos of Atlantic City, where he makes his way as a professional gambler, avoiding the scrutiny of agents like Moneeba Khan from the Casino Control Commission and others, but he doesn't avoid me, and I'm very fortunate to welcome Joel Diaz-Porter.
Thank you, Peter, for that wonderful introduction.
I don't know if you need that.
Yeah, I probably don't for this one. So one quick note. There's a technique that I employ in my poetry where after I finish the poem, I go back through and I create an erasure poem from the poem. My erasure poems are almost always haiku or senru, because I write haiku or senru. So then what I do is I highlight the text in red. And so I call those, the shorter ones, ghost poems, and the bigger ones, the host poem. And so the job of the ghost poem is to trouble or complicate the host poem. So obviously you can't see that. So what I'll do is I'll read the ghost poem first, and then I'll read the host poems. This poem is titled, An Idea of Improvisation Played on the Horns of the Ox in Paradox. And the ghost poem is Mistranslation, the Seeds of an Imaginary Evergreen. As a child, a purple plush animal I named Pythagoras made joyful noise only I could hear until the metal teeth on a bike sprocket of logic severed his single horn. Newly numb and seeking to sew together his song, I took up the trumpet. Assuming no mistranslation, didn't Pythagoras praise music as sacred math, numbers raised to the highest power? Here, I couldn't know how the throats of birds tend to angle when raising the seeds of melody in their beaks. Was this also the geometry of my high school trumpet angling to be muted as moonlight bloomed in our shoebox apartment so I could practice what beauty was aloud? I believe Pythagoras also allowed for the I in lyric as sign of an imaginary unit. But I haven't heard of the bird part of our brains only co-sign the seeds of language to angle our tangents towards an evergreen music of music. Can't the bloom inside a blossom be the need inside a needle, whether record or pine, to slow slivers of air to some sense of song? Have you ever smelled oil on a trumpet's breath? Or felt rhythm uncoiled to kill time around midnight? Logicians still aim to prove that death can bloom into a number of fugues, though little logic, as death was once branded with the fugitive fire of the fleur-de-lis. But did they lose the rhyme between sounds and booms? I hear my boy T claims this may be the truest thing about beauty. A lyric can be a useful essay, but an essay is a useless ass lyric. When I play the lyre, I also claim to see lyrics collecting on lips as dew collects on dogwood leaves. But do I? Maybe I only took up the horn to learn how to hold Apophenia and see where her breath might leave in the bowl of my collarbone. After an errant elbow freed one front tooth, I tried to pick up the horn again, but red graffiti sprawled in a school bathroom stall claimed a one-armed man can never play the violin. And yet the color of every emergency exit seems to signal this. What horn player's mouth hasn't bloomed into a misread wound? Have you heard how jazz trumpeter Lee Morgan could read his wife's sheet music as easily as her grocery notes, but still could not read her most notable lung wound? There's some nights I think Pythagoras only grasped music as the grammar of sound making sentences. But listen, who amongst us hasn't needed to number the hoarse notes galloping out of a bridled mouth? As Peter said, I spent a lot of time in casinos. So this is my Atlantic City poem, and it's about an affair I had with a cocktail waitress. This is also the poem that I read in the State of the Arts program. And it's titled An Idea of Improvisation with Suspended Chords for GS. Mostly because it was a Thursday, which is her Monday, and she was walking by as if bent by something heavy, albeit not in her hands. And perhaps I heard her sigh like a parchment unscrolling in the wind, and recalled Lonnie, who you guys might not know. Not Lonnie who pawned his wedding band to feed the penny slots, nor Lonnie from the Hill District who always seemed half a slice short of a sandwich, but Lonnie from Lonnie's Lament. And here, she'd cock her head and wrinkle her nose because whatever seemed to slant Lonnie's reins so sideways also made John Coltrane raise his saxophone and vanish into a wail that nearly matches the individual swish of her Monday motion. Piano lines almost legato as her legs and a bass line of hair that plunges like a black Niagara when she shakes it. And now, our gazes cross, which she can't know unzips the earth and makes me want to kneel and pray to spend the rest of my days naked and trembling in a maple barrel, falling forever through her obsidian mist. Like a lot of poets, I have daddy issues. Not enough time here to explain. But the central conceit in this poem is that when Charlie Parker, the famous jazz saxophonist, was living in Kansas City, he got married, he had a couple kids, and at one point he goes to his wife and he says, "I think without you, meaning the family, I could be great." And then he moves to New York City where, he becomes the great Charlie Parker. So anyway, the poem is titled An Idea of Improvisation as an Algorithm of the Blues. And the ghost poem is Bird Song Beneath the Yellow Taxis, Ghost Notes. Although this ain't about, one more quick thing. This poem contains lines from a whole bunch of famous poems that reference Charlie Parker, including New Jersey poet Linda Hall, who I think is vastly underappreciated. So anyway, if you know Linda's work, you'll recognize the line. So yeah, An Idea of Improvisation is an algorithm of the blues. Although this ain't the ballad of a wounded boy, tonight a needle descends into a record's black skin like a dove winging into a window, until you may hear in the alto horn's tone an extra stress on the moon in testimony. But listen, no matter how high the moon, could even Charlie Parker chart the burdens of a bird into ornithology? Even if in other takes Yardbird stays, doesn't leave his wife and infant son the way autumn might litter a lawn. Could the tiny eyes of any bird ever urge you to push square pegs of an arpeggio into a cobalt hole? Let's be clear. Blue may be nothing he loves or nothing that ever loved him, just some jive frequency of water, sky, or a bright bandana tied across his brow. But if nothing aqua ever seeped in his lungs, how could a moaned no connect the power of breath to epistemology? Joy, the poet Joy Wardrobe, claims birdsong proves the futility of words. And what human could improve its contrafactual flow? Some nights, even the moon appears to take notes as Parker makes a fractal of the phrase, then flattens and sharpens 1/8 into a swollen vein. This paradox might remain hypodermic, a beaked flame of bird speak beneath a spoon's black skin, but let's say the song ain't over. I don't know why some cats try to pull from Parker's tone as much weight as witness, while others say the warp and woof of the blues weaves hip bandanas to flag down the yellow taxis of axioms. But I do know that many claim Baird lives in this address of ghost notes, unexpected as ketchup on cornflakes. Of course, imagination sometimes flares into an act of faith, and perhaps even the hands of an abandoned boy might find themselves waving outside a window as Baird mines a horn's phonographic memory, which cannot choose what it may or may not say. Take a phrase, then fracture it, he recycles one solo to say, until even the tune of a wounded dove can fray into ontology. And yet, still can't free his slender hands to twist the band into a bandage. As you may have noticed, I love all types of music. And so this is for my favorite classical violinist, the one by the name of Hilary Hahn. And this poem is titled An Idea of Improvisation as Adagio for Violin and Viola. I'm not going to read your ghost poem because it's not that good. Yeah. An idea of improvisation as adagio for violin and viola. Not unlike a twinning of fingers beginning to slide, a bending in pitch, until a layer of uncertainty begins to merge two citrus bodies, say a blood and navel orange in a still life. And yet not a sound like a long passage connecting two bodies of water beneath a duvet of darkness, or as waves of intonation from camellia lips making the leaps of a guzzle into the sea of a secret which, when you toss your hair that way, seems to ripple like what in softer light could be called abandon for now. But a sound of fingers on taut strings, while orange petals warm the air above the wisp of a wick, as if any two wooden bodies might share a note or anything hand-drawn to inscribe us so close to a treble clef that a silkening seems to blend us into one long scarf of sigh, almost pianissimo as freshly cut iris. Or perhaps reaches beneath a bare stretch of thigh or neck that surely must ripple with the blood of navel orange's silent ache. Or not. As if only until dawn. As if only until the filaments of said ripple become prone to rise or fall like the brush of red chrysanthemum on a ridge of collarbone. All right, Sade is one of my favorite singers. So, two quick things. Her father is from Nigeria, he's Yoruba. So this poem uses a Yoruba word, Ifemi, which means beloved or sweetheart or whatever. I like to think of myself as like a kind of a Sufi poet. I'm not saying I am, so I like to think of myself that way. And so this poem kind of, I hear that element in some of her songs. I'm not saying it's there, I'm saying I hear it. So anyway, this poem is mixing those two trying to mix those two things together, kind of. And so, nonsense. Okay, so the ghost poem goes, midnight sky, until you return, almond blossoms. And it has an epigraph from a Sade song. Didn't I tell you what I believe? Did somebody say that? An idea of improvisation as much ado about nothing. Ifemi, how many more dream cycles must I hold my breath until your cat eyes and rebel red nails repress their crescents into the midnight sky of my back? Until your vixen lipstick recrosses the ravine of no return to sip me once more like a sommelier. Ifemi, is it a rhyme when not even the nutty undertone of almond blossoms can stop a man from being spotted like a lunar moth by the halo of your porch light? Half icicle, half feather. It seems only this morning your fingers counted every curl on my neck. But Ifemi, who traces your phases of the moon tattooed now? Pray tell, should our gazes cross again, I promise not to miss your wrist brassy passion for prayer beads and police bracelets, or how your husky alto might crown my love as king. Ifemi, why do I seek cashmere for palms marked by symbols of 5 types of pharaoh? Ifemi, if I dissolve into the blue flame of your breath, will I return this breath, or simply burn? Oh, freckled cheeks of Jesus, I now begin to grasp why Shakespeare claimed Cupid kills some with arrows, some with traps. But who knows which angle of light could make apparent what's hidden in the amber of your irises? Effendi, is it not written as a saxophone signals sapphire that a fool for roses must stay a fool for rain? I don't believe you wrote a love like ours won't last before your ponytail braided with aches swung past the first flame of bud to our last goodbye. Yet, Effendi, how can I be sure if your hair's scent of sandalwood and citrus might settle what a held breath seemed to be trying to say about absence as a way of staying? All right, I'm gonna go with this. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in this poem, so much for me to explain, but there's a very famous poet, one of the most famous poets in the world, by the name of Jalaluddin Rumi. And so he's a Persian and a Sufi poet. So his most famous poem in the rest of the world, maybe not America, but the rest of the world, is called The Song of the Reed Flute. And in Persian, that flute is called a ney flute. So you'll hear a reference to that in his poem. And then there was an African-American spoken word group called The Last Poets. And one of the members of The Last Poets changed his name to Jalaluddin. So when I was a kid, I was like maybe 10 years old, I saw that record, and I was like, why did he change his name? So I went to the library to find out who Jalaluddin was, and that's how I found out who Rumi was. Okay, so the Rumi Indian, and the ghost poem goes, last harvest, a lavender you overhear in the rain. The Rumi in you may whirl to wonder what fluted bloom could ruin love more than the rasp of rain eroding. And when you hear rasp, do you think of rain? Another shade of ruin born of rain? I misread that. Sorry. And when you hear rasp, do you think of rust? Another shade of ruin born of rain? Do you still not grasp why Jalaluddin was among the last poets who faced annihilation in every nation, including ruination? When the past harvest moon was covered by clouds, did you learn to lavender your deepest bruise? Or did you whisper your weak chin as if your own ruined beauty wasn't a wearable thing? Even unspoken, wabi-sabi, Japanese for a grain of rust, seems a Rumi word. When you first heard a lavender flute begin to flower, did you overhear any traces of faith? Did those traces veil or reveal addiction to the long open dew found in fruit, or hint why that eye so central to faith ran quietly as a letter left out in the rain? And does this dot an eye in ruin or an eye in union? Perhaps outside your window, the you in Rumi mishears a whirling tune of windblown petals, raining in whispers, and turns sapphires the eye of a Sufi to wonder. If one spins to whisk a thicker brew from a flower's fast sorrow, do one's beard or bruises begin to masquerade as faith or even masculinity? Or do they dare dissolve into wounded blooms until there's a chance the Rumi in you may turn to sense what separates us from the nay in name, or returns to view how some become lovers of the sound of rain, yet others simply lovers of the sound of ruin.
Thank you, Joel Diaz Porter. And our third reader,
Peter.
here we go.
Peter. What is
Like that. Okay, thank you. Our third reader. I have known the hardworking and ingenious Karen Z. Duffy for more than 40 years. First as teaching colleagues at Atlantic City High School, then as friends and fellow poets. Karen has 5 kids. It's impossible to become a writer when you have 5 kids. You can't even wash your hair. Yet, Karen is a writer, and I think her hair is fairly clean. Her poetry chapbook, which is for sale, Giving Into the Smoke, received the Starting Gate Award from Mid-Finishing Line Press, and she's won fellowships from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts and the Norman Mailer Colony in Provincetown, Massachusetts. A wee bit more than 25 years ago, the local mafia decided to burn down her house while she and her 5 children and husband were in it. Karen's been writing a memoir about that part of her life, that horrible part of her life, and I have a feeling she might read a bit of it for us today. Let's welcome Karen Z. Duffy.
very much, Teresa and Ann, for having us. So now there's a whole thing that I don't even have to say. Can you? Yeah, thanks. I started writing this, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. And I got some work done, and I decided to call, this was originally called When Gangsters Burn Your House Down With You in It, right, which Peter has mentioned. So, I don't know why, but I got this idea at the time to call one of the men who went to jail for, not starting the fire, but for the house, we bought a house that had hidden, stolen, hidden things in the house, right? That's what happened. Well, so I decided to call this guy, I don't know, very naively, to ask him a question. And there was a pause, and what he said to me was something to the effect of, "You stupid bitch. Don't write this. These people are still around and they will hurt you." So I'm not very tough, so that kind of shut me down for a decade. Now I'm here. Changing the title of this book to Home on the Edge. And this is an excerpt from a chapter which is called Giving Into the Smoke. Nothing to do with, well, maybe, but all right. Giving into the smoke. Imagine this. It's 6:30 on Saturday morning and your house is on fire. It's no longer a fire on the front porch, it's the house is on fire, and that's different. Joe has said everyone has to get out, and you can rely on Joe's sense of danger because he's a combat veteran. He speaks in terms of incoming and hot LZ and Charlie Alpha. If Joe says it's time to get out, it's time to get out. It's now only about 2 minutes since Megan ran into our room to say there was a fire outside on the front porch. How does a fire start on the front porch? And how did Megan know there was a fire? Later we'll learn she had fallen asleep on the living room sofa and had heard the flames. She heard the crackling because the sofa was on the other side of the wall from where the fire was. She'd only slept there by accident. This house, I'm thinking, it's always been too good to be true. A beach house built in the 20s, big enough for all 5 of our kids. This corner lot, only 2 blocks from the beach and a few from Atlantic City. The beautiful renovations that Baldini, not his real name, the previous owner had done in the only 2 years he owned it. How had he paid for it all? It didn't add up. He was only a groundskeeper at the high school, and his wife didn't work at all. Plus, they had 4 kids. How did he pay for it all? The new siding alone must have cost $50,000. There were stories about him and his family, like how his wife showed up at the neighborhood Halloween parade wearing a floor-length mink coat. When we bought the house in 1994, the new Atlantic City High School had been under construction for 2 years. The same 2 years Baldini had owned the house. He was in charge of buying materials that went into the school's construction, and it was no secret that he was stealing supplies for his own use. In Atlantic City, crimes are committed right out in the open, and it's fine. It's 6:30 in the morning and I'm back in our bedroom. If I'm back in our bedroom, I must have passed all the kids' rooms to get there, because our bedroom is at the far end of the hall from the stairs. But this, I don't remember going there, but this part though, this I remember. I stood in our bedroom with my Uggs on at that point, and I had to wake up the kids. I moved down the hall to Mike's room, and I woke up Mike first. Mike, my 15-year-old son, was in the bedroom closest to the steps, the escape route, but farthest away from where I stood in our bedroom, and I got him first. What I'm saying is that I deliberately passed the bedrooms of my 2 other children, even though they were on the way, in order to get Mike first. This wasn't something I was conscious of at the time, but something I thought about later after I realized I had done it. Why had I done that? What did it mean? that I loved him the most? Anyone with more than one child knows that children take turns as the focus of a parent's worries. When one of your kids is having a good year in school, the other doesn't have enough friends. And when the other suddenly has friends, the first one doesn't make the team. At 6:30 on that Saturday morning, I was most worried about Mike. I tell myself today this is the reason I passed by the other two to get him first. Mike was shy, self-conscious, and spacey. He'd always had a helpless in the world quality that made me just want to explode with love. Every time his sister called him a dork, I was afraid she was right. Mike hadn't adjusted as well as I'd hoped when we moved to Ventnor 4 years earlier. That was when Joe and I had moved in together. Even though Mike's father and I had been separated for over 3 years, the move to Ventnor came not long after the divorce was final. Plus, and I should have known this, I'd underestimated how much tougher Ventnor was than the inland community we'd come from. Out there, Mike played the trumpet and was on the soccer team. He had umbros in several colors. But in Ventnor, the only thing less cool than soccer clothes was playing the trumpet. Surfing clothes and surfing were cool, not playing in the band, and other 6th graders let him know it. Now he was in 10th grade, and even though he had athletic and therefore social success, I still worried about him. I leaned into his door with my shoulder because it always stuck. The house was old and crooked. Mike, get up, the house is on fire. Huh? The house is on fire, we have to get out. What do you mean? Mike, the house is on fire and we have to get out. It's on fire? Why? Mike, get up. I saw him begin to sit up and swing his legs over the side of the bed, so I ran to Lexi's room, still passing by 2-year-old Brian. I must have known Joe would get Brian, which he did at that very same minute, though I don't remember him doing it. Lexi's name is really Alexandra, which means warrior woman. She was 13 and in 7th grade, confident, loud, and fast on her feet. I knew that even if I woke her up last, she'd be out first, and she was. A minute later, Mike was running down the steps and I was behind him, but I couldn't find Lex. I would search many more times that morning for people I'd already found, repeating a frantic cycle of search, find, forget, search, find, forget. I must have replayed those steps in this endless loop 40 times, between 6:30 and about 9 a.m. Finally, I spotted her already outside, halfway down the street, with Brian in her arms. At that point, I stood in the kitchen near the back door, the door everyone had escaped from. I knew Joe was still in the house because I remember hearing his voice telling me to get out. Did he still have Brian? I don't know. And I think Joe had given him to Lex or to Megan at that point. I remember standing in our kitchen, my kitchen, and looking out across the living room toward the front porch and seeing smoke come through the walls. All the smoke detectors in the house went off at the same time. Had Megan not slept on the sofa, this would have been our first warning. In accidental fires, smoke comes at the beginning of the fire, of course. There's a period of smoldering and smoking, which smoke detectors detect. But because our fire started outside and traveled straight up, the entire outside of the house on both floors was engulfed before any smoke came in and set off alarms. In our case, a mass of flames and noxious smoke announced itself all at once. Had Megan not slept on the sofa, we wouldn't have known the fire was out there. We would have been asleep, just as we'd been 3 to 4 minutes earlier. We would have had about 1 minute to get out. From asleep to outside in less than a minute, 6 of us. Possible, yes, I think it was possible. The firemen would later say, probably not. Almost all house fires these days are fueled by synthetics and are therefore especially deadly. Synthetics are made from plastics, which themselves are made from crude oil. Did you know that? Materials we surround ourselves with, things like shower curtains, blinds, appliances, doors, window frames, casings for televisions, computers, carpet fibers, electrical wiring, and the PVC pipes under our houses all emit poisonous gas, even during the heating process, even before smoldering and well before ignition. Your cell phone alone can kill you even if you're nowhere near the foam stuffing in your sofa that's emitting hydrogen cyanide, not to mention the sole of your very own shoe. Our house, wrapped in vinyl siding, made our fire especially deadly since it was burning from the outside in. Brian's bedroom in the middle was the smallest one. It was situated across the front of the house to allow for the space that made the upstairs hallway. The effect inside his room was not just that it was smaller, but that it was pushed forward, closer to the windows. Proportionately, the windows were big. In the summer, it was the coolest room in the house because it seemed to be all window, all front window. Brian's crib, and therefore Brian himself, was just a few feet away from those windows. Later, Joe would tell me when he went in to get Brian out of his crib, which was the same moment I was waking up Lex, Brian was already half awake. And when he saw Joe's face, he broke into his moon-faced grin and stuck his arms out to play the bouncy game they played every morning. But Joe leaned over and said, "Not today, buddy." All he could see outside of Brian's windows was orange. It was a wall of fire. I remember expressing surprise that it could have grown that quickly. I couldn't believe the flames had been licking at Brian's window in what seemed like a matter of seconds. Joe, who was not one to exaggerate, said they weren't licking. It was a huge orange wall. That was only about 3 minutes after Megan had come into our room. If you think giving into the smoke refers to an emotional compromise or a philosophical surrender, or even the refrain in a pop song, you're wrong. What it refers to is the most important thing you'll ever do in your life. If you don't have the guts to admit you're in trouble and need help, you won't get out alive. Let's say you're swimming in the ocean on a summer day. The water is calm and warm and the sun is shining. And suddenly, lifeguards are whistling, waving, and racing toward you. Who's being saved? Not you. It can't be you. You're not in trouble. You know how to swim, and this water's not even over your head. But sure enough, they're coming for you. Why? When they get to you, what will you do? Will you thank them for saving your life? Not likely. If you don't know your life needs saving in the first place, then you won't thank them for saving it. You'll probably ask them what the hell they're doing. You'll be confused, and if the beach is crowded with curious onlookers, you might even refuse to cooperate. You might punch and fight your rescuers. Getting rescued is embarrassing. This is a story many lifeguards will tell you. Forget tearful thank yous and life-affirming hugs like you see on television. They are not real. This is real. After being rescued on the beach, most people just grab their things and run away. Others might even stay and fight to save face. What's behind this is they didn't know they were in trouble. If you're swimming in the ocean and you want to come in, you swim toward the beach, of course. You swim and swim, but if you're in trouble, you won't get anywhere. Except you don't know this. You're throwing forward strokes after all, but the water is pulling you out to sea. Lifeguards call this swimming backwards because that's what it looks like from the beach. They see you're not making any progress, and in fact, you're being pulled out, and they know they have to go and get you. They can't wait until you know you're in trouble, because that is not only a harder rescue, but quite possibly too late. The same is true if you're swimming near a jetty. If the current suddenly shifts or the tide turns, you could get smashed into the rocks, but you don't know this either. You don't know why they're coming to get you. It's hard to realize how quickly things change. If your house is on fire, You think you have time to run back into your burning house and get your purse or something. And if there's nobody there to say, no, don't do it, would you think you had time? I would have. I stood in the kitchen in a spot where I could see the front door and the back door at the same time, and I heard the smoke detectors go off. I heard Joe yell at me to get out. I heard windows break. I saw thick black smoke oozing through the living room walls. I am not talking about airy, atmospheric campfire smoke that hangs in the air like fog. I am talking about a solid mass of pitch black poison. Oily, thick, toxic refinery smoke. The kind you can't take one breath of, not one. That's what was oozing through the front walls of my house like terrifying, vengeful anger, and behind it, violent, living, breathing flames. And this is what I've been wanting to say. This is what I mean by giving into the smoke. This is what you have to think about. It is 6:30 in the morning. It is Saturday. You are in your kitchen. This is the place where you live, the place that feeds you and holds you. And this place is going to kill you. This fire, this smoke is coming into your house, and you have to let it. You have to let it come in, and you have to get out. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen Duffy, and we're glad you got out. I'm going to read a poem set in Atlantic City, and then I'm going to read from the Memoir, and just to continue this Atlantic City theme. And the speaker in this poem, it's a persona poem, is a dealer at one of the tables. It's called Closing Time. Closing Time. The 24-hour bars in Atlantic City have 3 happy hours a day, so I can pursue happiness no matter what time my shift lets out. I know the end is near when the cleaners appear to scrape gum from the gaudy carpets and drizzle disinfectant over urine dripped from the dicers who don't want to lose their place at the table. Gullible men who believe they can game the ivories they toss across the green felt when they can't control their bladders. I used to think life was a wall of dominoes, and if I tipped one over, all my problems would come a-tumbling down. I also believed being happy was the key to happiness, but that just made me sadder. Everyone suffers, my friends, and most of us suffer more than others as we lumber down the boardwalk from Pampers to Depends, muling and puking and leaking at both ends. I'm going to read from the memoir, which I didn't want to write. I didn't want to be a prose writer, and I didn't think I had a story to tell. And then several friends nagged me into it. I thought my childhood was absolutely normal. Even after my mother died when I was 7, and I was shuffled from home to home around New York City. Even after I was kidnapped twice by gangs, once at gunpoint. In fact, I was had guns pointed at me 5 times in my first 2 decades. Even after a priest used me as a boy toy for a year. Even after I broke my collarbone and 6 ribs in a freak accident. Even after I got myself $1,000 in debt to a mafia-connected dentist. Even after I stumbled into a shootout in the blood-stained streets of Northern Ireland during the Troubles, I thought my childhood and adolescence were just normal, like everybody else's. It was decades later when I realized that, well, maybe that didn't happen to everybody. That maybe my younger years were not normal, which is why I wrote A Tipsy Fairy Tale. I wanted to figure out what the hell was going on. I think of my high school years as early derelict period. Mid-derelict period began when I flunked out of 3 colleges and then went to work at a bar so I could be near what I loved. And then late derelict period commenced when I fled the United States and returned to Wales, where I was born, and left as an infant. But the strangest part of my childhood, I fell in love with poetry at an early age, and that's what saved my life. I'm going to read the preface to A Tipsy Fairy Tale. This will just take about 2 minutes, but it'll give you a sense of what the book's about. This is a story about finding what you're looking for, even if you don't know what you're looking for, even if you don't know you're looking. It's a story about how shame, guilt, loss, and secrets can drive up the mileage on your soul. 15 years after getting sober, I started to have drinking dreams. Night after night, I was startled awake at 3 in the morning by vivid reveries that ended with me lifting a bottle of alcohol to my lips. I live in a dry town next to the always turned on Atlantic City, whose casinos and bars are open 24 hours. I didn't know that I knew where I could get a drink, but like a Busby Berkeley extravaganza, marquees in my head flashed with bright lit names of bars and cocktail lounges, places like Flanagan's, Teddy's, the Melody Lounge. I was shaken. Not just that I wanted to drink, but that something inside me had been taking notes on where we could get one in the wee hours. I wanted to sneak out of bed and drive into a bar and end the life I had carefully constructed. I did get out of bed, but instead of getting in the car and taking off, I did what I usually do when I'm trying to figure something out. I wrote about it. This is a poem I wrote in the mid-'80s called The Desire. Last night I dreamt I was drinking again and got drunk and walked out on the quiet life I've been living these last few years. I watched as I let my family go, the wife who understood and would not forgive, the child who clung to my loose clothing crying, "Don't go, Daddy, don't go, take Mommy and me with you." I remember saying that too to my own father as he swung his arms around to touch me, and I trailed him as he followed his father until I let go. I fell back into sleep, into dreams. There were rivers I had to cross and recross, and fires starting in every forest I came to, and cars screeching around corners, about to go off a cliff, about to crash in a desert, where I'm thirsty all the time. I started writing poetry when I was 15, about the same age that I started drinking. They were the only things that made sense to me. My poems were the usual woe was me teenage schlock. I drank whatever I could get my hands on. 2 years later, I was drunk most of the time, even in school. How did nobody notice? I wrote poems sporadically at that point. If poetry had been my lover, well, I was unfaithful. But poetry didn't give up on me. It kept taking me back time and time again, and eventually led me to find faith, both in myself and in something larger than myself, something luminescent and audacious that helped me rise out of the ashes and give it another go. And so that's what the preface says. And then I'm going to read a piece that takes place in what I call late derelict period. I mentioned I had to leave the United States. I had to leave. I got in trouble with this mafia-connected dentist, which is a long story. And I didn't know where to go, but I had to get out of town. So I decided, I'm going to go to Wales. I left as a baby, and nobody knows me. So I figured I'd go for a few weeks. And when I got to Britain, I realized nobody in the entire country of Europe knows what a screw-up I am. So I decided to stay. I changed my name to Gaddy Morgan. They didn't know how to spell it. It was like, I spelled it G-A-R-R-Y. It was so screwed up I wasn't. And I found my family, my mother's family in Wales, and that was lovely. And then I decided to hitchhike around and find out about Wales, what this country was. And then eventually wound up in England and eventually in Scotland. And while I was in Scotland, somebody gave me some Irish coins I couldn't spend, so I would have to go to Ireland. I figured, all right, I'm a poet. I didn't really want to go to Ireland, but I wanted to find out about the limerick. You know what the limerick is? Right? Here's the limerick, in case you don't know. There once was a man from Nantucket who kept all of his cash in a bucket. But his daughter, named Nan, ran away with the man, and as for the bucket, Nan took it. So I figured I'd go to Limerick, and fast forward, I'm not going to read this poem. When I eventually got to Limerick, nobody had ever heard of the Limerick. So this takes place in the fall of 1971. And let me just say, I was really stupid about the world and about everything else. After a 2-hour sailing, you dock at Larne, about 20 miles north of Belfast. As you walk down the gangplank, you're stopped by soldiers who tell you not to move. They point what look like automatic rifles at you, and the good buzz you've been feeling flies away. They examine you closely like they know you've done something wrong, and then wave you through. What the hell is going on? You walk as fast as you can, barely noticing that it's raining until you leave the dock area behind and walk past terraced houses and closed shops and rubble. It looks like a war's going on, and you're so stupid you don't know that a war is going on. You walk north along the coast for a couple of hours and check in at a bed and breakfast in Ballygally. You ask the hostess about the soldiers, and she tells you about the troubles, and you're confused. Everyone's troubles. It's horrible, and it's becoming more violent, she says. You must be careful not to do anything to make them want to shoot you, because they will shoot you. Who's shooting you, ask? The Brits, of course, the soldiers. Be careful. She must think you're really stupid because you don't know that the Catholics and Protestants have been fighting for years, decades, centuries actually. You don't understand why religion makes people want to kill each other. Then you remember when you were in second grade, you got spanked for going to a Cub Scout meeting in the basement of a Lutheran church. Don't you dare go into a Protestant church again, your Catholic aunt told you. No Cub Scouts for you. Maybe that's why you never learned to tie a decent knot, or why you've never been prepared for anything. You spent the next few days walking along the Antrim coast and then hitchhiking and wind up in Bushmills at a youth hostel. And you spend the next day exploring the Giant's Causeway. Anything to the Giant's Causeway? No? Okay, well, a couple. You climb over the huge stone columns that rose out of the earth eons ago. At the youth hostel, you read a flyer that says the 40,000 basalt pillars are the result of volcanoes. But you prefer the story that the youth hostel manager tells you. An Irish giant named McCool challenged a Scottish giant named Benadonna to a fight. McCool built the causeway across the sea so he could go to war. But when he saw that Benadonna was a lot bigger than he was, he ran back and got his wife to dress him up like a baby. She sewed a giant diaper made from the sails of a ship and put it on him. When Benadonna came across and saw how big McCool's baby was, he realized his father must be a gianter giant than he was. So he ran back to Scotland, and on the way back, he tore the causeway apart so McCool couldn't follow him. The next day, you go back and walk on the Giant's Causeway, and when you return to the youth hostel that evening, it's been colonized by a school group from Londonderry or Derry, you're not sure what it's called. They're like ants in the kitchen, everywhere at once. Your food is where you left it in the cubby, but your Swiss Army knife is gone. Crap, one of the little bastards must have stolen it. Well, you stole it from your father, so, okay. You don't know if the kids are Catholic or Protestant. You don't know if, you imagine your knife turning up in the back of a soldier and you regret leaving it out. Time to leave Northern Ireland and go to Limerick. So the next morning you walk for a bit and stick out your thumb, and you get picked up by a trucker who makes deliveries along the Antrim coast. You look out at the water, which you learn is not called the Welsh Sea on this side, nor the English Sea, nor the Scottish Sea. It's still called the Irish Sea. And you're about to say that Ireland sure is beautiful, but you remember when you were in Wales and said England is beautiful, the driver stopped his car and told you to get out. You keep your mouth shut until the driver says, so where might you be from? New York. He stops the truck and looks at you. New York? You mean in America? Yeah. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Do you know my cousin Tommy Lynch? She lives in Chicago. You try not to laugh. He probably knows everyone between Belfast and Derry, but thinks you know between New York and Chicago, but sorry, I don't know him. After giving you half of his sandwich and pledging his lifelong friendship, the trucker lets you off at an intersection and says you can get a ride through Derry and into the Republic of Ireland. And you get another ride with two guys in a three-wheel milk truck. You hadn't seen these strange vehicles in Britain proper, but they're all over Northern Ireland. You throw your backpack onto the flatbed next to empty milk crates, and you get into the cramped cab. They ask where you're going, and you say Donegal and then down to Limerick. They say they'll take you through Derry to the Irish border, and from there you have a straight run to Donegal on the other coast. Their thick accents, roads are difficult to understand, but you can see that they're angry. What you finally get is that morning there was a protest in the Bogside, a Catholic neighborhood, where two of their friends were shot. Fucking Brits just showed up and ordered everybody on the ground. Our mates refused to get on their knees, and the fucking murderers shot them with their fucking rubber bullets. They're hurt, man. They can kill. horrified. You know nothing about this war. You didn't know it was a war until a few days ago. It makes no sense. In a few weeks, soldiers will shoot and kill 14 unarmed soldiers in the Barside in an incident known as Bloody Sunday. The driver proceeds through checkpoints manned by armed soldiers. These barriers are made of concrete, wood, and barbed wire arranged in a kind of maze, and there are speed bumps. The posted limit is 5 miles per hour, so the soldiers can get a good look at who's in the vehicle. Your driver slows, opens his window, and spits at the soldiers. It curses, "Go home, you fucking murderers." The soldiers have assault rifles. He has empty milk crates. He's crazy. He enters a maze, turns right, turns left, turns right again. You pass through 3 or 4 of these, and then he says, "One more, and we'll be driving to the border, okay?" He slows down to try through the one more when a gang of kids across the street throws rocks at the soldiers. As the soldiers lift their rifles, the driver curses, "Oh, fuck." He steps on the gas and speeds through the maze. You hear the milk crates slide from one side of the flatbed to the other, and know that your backpack is sliding with them. Then the abrupt turn, and everything slides back the other way. You hear shots fired. "Oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck," all 3 of you say, as you crouch as low as you can in the cab, your forehead pressing against the dashboard. On the way down, you notice the speedometer racing toward 15 miles per hour. That's nuts, you think. This maze is tricky at 5 miles an hour. Impossible at 15. You don't know if the soldiers are using real bullets or rubber bullets. You don't know if the soldiers are shooting at the kids or shooting at you. You're surprised the truck doesn't roll over at this speed. You're surprised you're not dead. The truck breaks out of the maze and races away. Several minutes down the road, the driver stops and yells, "Get out." He points and tells you to run that way, and you'll be in the Republic of Ireland. You get out and almost forget to take your backpack, which, oh fuck, is still there. You grab it, and you can barely breathe. Your truck roars away. You hold your butt in the direction he pointed. You don't see a sign, so you don't know if you've crossed into the border into the Republic of Ireland. Eventually, you stop running to catch your breath and make sure you're alive and unshot. And damn, you look at the sky and you raise your fist and you scream. You scream. You shouldn't be shot in a war that has nothing to do with you. A war you didn't even know was war. You don't live here. How stupid. Killing each other over a God that doesn't exist. When you know nothing about it, you can at least understand Muslims and Jews killing each other because they believe in different gods. But Catholics and Protestants, they believe in the same guy. They're on the same team. Obviously, you know nothing about centuries of, nothing about the Islamic history or the Quran or the Reformation and centuries of hatred between Catholics and Protestants. But then you have an idea, an original idea. Why are we killing each other because of our religion or nationality or race? Why can't we see we're all human beings? We're fucking brilliant. In the history of the whole world, no one has ever thought that. Until you did in the Republic of Ireland in December of 1971. Fucking brilliant. You hitched several rides to Donegal, check in a bed and breakfast, and sit in a pub till closing, trying to drown your original idea in your miserable brilliance. Hours later, despite several shots of Irish whiskey and several pints of Guinness, you lie shaking in bed all night. And even though you're drunker than you've been in months, you cannot sleep. Thank you. Please thank our other leaders as well.
Thank you so much. And I feel like we've just traveled through story and poetry and, yes, Atlantic City. But it was really a phenomenal ride. And thank you, Peter, for bringing 3 writers that we would not have known about otherwise. Thank you to the audience. And we do have some refreshments. There are some books here. Please come and mingle with our writers. You can buy their books. Thank you.